I love Lazy Day, and I also love the Foods of Athenry.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen their stuff for the last time I saw their stuff. Remember when we were in Ireland last year and we saw their stuff in the supermarket?
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome back everybody to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. This is episode 51, I think. So we're almost a year in, believe it or not. And thank you to all of those who stuck with us for nearly a whole year.
This is the only time that the podcast is the same age as me, 51.
Oh, are you 51?
Yeah.
Oh,
So old.
Well, what a coincidence. What does it mean?
What a coincidence.
Deirdre Chambers, what a coincidence.
Chambers. But do you know, when I say to people, oh, I'm old, or I make reference to being old, and people say to me, oh, you're not that old. And then they say, how old are you? And I say 51. And then they say, oh, okay.
Is that when they say, you're not that old, you're not that fat?
Yeah, you're not that fat. Oh, anyway, you're in the middle of the welcome.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the introduction. So my name is Josh. I'm one of the hosts here on Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. We're a podcast where we talk about everything from Muriel's wedding quotes to weight loss, age shaming, etc. How are you, Sean?
I'm good. I am really feeling the effects of the weight loss journey that I've been on, in that how other people react to it. Because I think I've gotten to a point now where it's quite noticeable that I've lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I run, like people know, because we don't shut up about it, I run events. Like we run the Queer Open Mic together. I run London Vegan Social. I run a ton of other events. But London Vegan Social has been going for years, on and off in some form, for probably, I don't even know, 13 years more. You think about London Vegan Drinks started back in 2012 or something, I think. Like it was a very long time. Yeah, a long time ago. And so these events happen regularly, monthly. So I have people who come maybe once every 6 months or once a year, or sometimes I don't see them for 2 years. And I sent some photos to you before of me from a year ago, of when I was probably the fattest I've ever been in my life. And can you imagine if somebody saw me like that and then the next time they saw me I look like this?
Yeah.
That's a bit shocking, isn't it?
It's very drastic, yeah.
It's quite alarming or arresting. Yes. And so I had a bunch of people come to London Vegan Social the other night who looked at me like they had seen a ghost, or they did a double take. It was like that Scooby-Doo, like, huh? Like thing like that. I almost lost my headphones then.
Like Buffalo Bill had like killed the old Sean, skinned him, and then like stuck his skin over their skinny body or something.
Yeah. So people are saying to me, hey, like, hi, really weird. And I'm like, hi, and I know what's coming. Like, I just know.
Yeah.
And then people want, like, I don't think, if I knew someone that I saw once every 6 months or once a year, and that's the extent of how I knew them, I don't think what they looked like, no matter what they looked like, if they were missing an ear, or if they had lost 45 kilos, or if they were twice the size, whatever, I don't think I would comment on their appearance. But that's just me. I don't think I would.
Yeah. I think societal kind of expectations dictate that, you do want to compliment people when you see them, and so if there's an element of their appearance which has changed that fits into societal norms or pressures around what we should be doing, like if they, are wearing nice clothes, if they have got a nice haircut, if they've lost weight, I think there is that kind of impulse to say, oh, that's a lovely, that's a lovely shirt, that's a lovely coat. Oh, your hair looks nice, or oh, you look great. I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, you've lost weight and you look great. Obviously I wouldn't say that. Some people would, but I do think you look well, you look good, something like that. It's not, that's okay. I think that's acceptable.
And I had, a few people the other night saying, you look great. And to me, that straight away is so coded, isn't it? Like, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just not
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
because you've lost weight.
I mean, you could be really like facetious and be like, "Oh, thank you. What is it? Is it my shirt? Is it my hair?
Yeah,
My beard?"
yeah.
Like, you know.
Oh, somebody did say to me the other night, who was it? Oh, it was a friend of ours, I think, said to me, "Oh, you look very tired." And I was like, that's such
that's
a weird
that's
thing
not
to
an
say to someone.
acceptable thing.
That's such a weird thing to say to someone. And so they said to me, "Oh, you look very tired. Your eyes look very tired." And I said,
Um,
"Oh, thank you. That's exactly the look I was going for tonight when I was getting ready. So thank you." And they sort of went, "What?" And I was like,
do you,
"Well, how am I meant to react to that?" Like,
was it a shady thing of saying you've got a Zempic face? I mean, I don't think you do have a Zempic face, but
well, I don't even like that term. I don't even want to say that term. I mean, what does
well,
that
I
mean?
mean, it's just
Because
shorthand for
because if
people who
somebody lost weight without what are these drugs? What's the umbrella term for these drugs?
something inhibitors.
I can't remember. I mean, people
Yeah,
call them weight loss jabs.
semaglutide. Yeah, skinny pens. So skinny pens.
Skinny pen. I've not heard
Skinny
that.
pen. Oh,
I've
have you
heard
not?
I've
That's
heard
what
weight jabs.
skinny
But
pen is the most common one I've heard.
I'm on all these Reddit threads for like Manjaro to read what other people are saying and experiences. I enjoy reading, people's experiences.
Mm,
And yeah, everyone pretty much just across the board refers to them as the jabs. Like I'm on the
the
jabs,
jabs. I'm on the
the
jab.
jabs. But anyway, yeah, saying to someone
Call me a Zempic
anything.
face because I'm on the jabs.
Call me.
How do you get that on a t-shirt?
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of something else funny like that. Call me as epic face because I'm on the jabs. That is so good.
Uh,
Yeah, I want something about the jabs on a t-shirt, like some sort of
mm,
or
mm.
what if you started a band called Ozempic Face and the Jabs?
Josh and the jabs. Josh and the
But jab is such a weird word. Is it a real word?
jab. Yeah.
Jab, like you can jab something, like jab someone. It's like when you make a sticking or stabbing motion.
Yeah. But
So
it's also, you could, I mean, sorry to take it there, but you could use it as a sexual innuendo as well. So if you could somehow work into like, I'm like, I love being jabbed or something, like, or maybe something a bit better than that. But
I love obvious, like not even innuendo. I love really obvious things, like when people perform at the Queer Open Mic, because we perform at the Cock Tavern. People think they're so clever when they get on stage to perform and they say, "Hello, fellow cock lovers,"
yeah,
and everyone thinks they're the first or the cleverest person to do it. And so
including me.
there's
I mean, once a month without fail, I'll make a
there's
joke
yeah,
about.
there's always variants of it, like "Hello, fellow cock lovers," or "Oh, I love the cock so much."
Yeah.
If I could say something similar about jabs, yeah.
Jab me
But
good.
jab me good, jab me.
Jab
Um,
me good. Jab me skinny.
I'm Jabba the Hutt.
Jab me good. Jab me skinny. A Zempic face make me pretty.
Jabba the slut. Um,
Apologies. Sorry. This episode is very fast descended into just nonsense.
it's turned
Um,
into Jibba Jabba soon. Jibba Jabba from Jabba the Slut. That's
right.
like do you know Jabba or Jab is like in Australia all those morning radio shows, or they're in the US as well. It's not so much here, but they have like these kooky like two guys and a girl, like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they have like names like Bozo and so in the morning,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and it could be Jibba Jabba and Jabba the Slut in the morning.
Jib, jab, and Jew or something. Well, not J double O. That is not J E W.
Yeah, Juju and Jabba the Slut in the morning coming at your hot. Well,
Yeah,
that would be
like
this.
Kyle and Jackie O. Like
Yeah, but they
Jabba,
always have some
Jabba
weird
J, Jabba J, and
Jabba J. Oh,
can we try and get this episode back on track?
I don't even know if there ever was a
Oh,
track.
also, just a small caveat. I'm dog sitting again this week, and I have a small Chihuahua sitting on my bed just across from me. He sleeps about 23 hours of the day, but there's a very strong probability that he will at some point make a little little whine or yelp or something. So
What does anyone know why Chihuahuas are that way? Have that sort of disposition?
what the
Well,
yelpy
well,
thing
they're
or
either yelpy and like trembly and
this
uh,
is he's a real trembler.
or they're
He's
aggressive. They're unreasonably aggressive, just
he's
at
not
bizarre moments.
he's not aggressive at all. He's an old man. He's deaf. His eyesight's going. He's got no teeth.
Hmm.
So I have to break up all his food into tiny, tiny
Are we
little
talking about me or the
portions.
dog now?
Talking about the dog, and he's really very sweet. But he's a master manipulator, and um, I read online the first time I looked after him, and he started the whole trembling thing. I was like, oh my God, is he having a seizure or something? And I read online that Chihuahuas, not exclusively, but
Yeah,
a lot of small dogs, but particularly Chihuahuas, learn from a very young age that when they tremble, they get attention. They basically get whatever they want.
yeah.
And so it's like a feedback loop. And so they learn that they can manipulate who they're with by their trembling. So he's looking at me as I'm talking, even though he's deaf. I swear sometimes he's just like he knows what I'm saying.
Maybe he heard you
Um,
laughing and having fun, and he was just like, "Not on my watch.
yeah. Well,
Not
he's
on
not
my."
trembling. I
Not,
think he's nodding off now. He's falling asleep. So
yeah, he
um,
heard something else being the center of attention. He's like, "Not on my watch, Jabba the slut."
but but he hasn't been to the toilet yet, like either number one or number two. And so, despite giving him about 50 opportunities this morning, I just know that at some point during recording this podcast, he's just going to wake up from his slumber and be like, right, now's the time. So I'll have to edit that out. I might have to
Do you,
jump up.
do you remember that dog in Sydney? I think it lived with Clint and Jason. Was it? And
Oh my
or
God.
maybe it
Stella?
was Ian, but she used to climb on people's shoulders. Do you
She used to
remember?
climb on people's heads. She was so like, she wanted to assert her dominance
Yeah.
so much. She would literally try and climb onto your head to sort of, subjugate you.
So you'd be sitting
She
at a
was a bit of
computer
she
or
was a
watching
bit of a
TV.
nightmare.
Yeah,
She
watching
was a
TV, and
really
she'd try and start by climbing onto your shoulder and draping, but then trying to climb and get on top of you. But what is like? Okay, I get it, but what psychologically, what's going on? What does she think that's going to do?
she's showing you who's boss, top dog.
Literally, top dog, like on top of.
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't got my hair in a top knot. I've got it in a top dog.
top dog.
Um
Do you like talking of explosive diarrhea? Uh, did
did we talk about that?
well, you were
Don't
just
know.
saying like this nervy dog might accidentally need to go or
Yeah.
might need to relieve itself at any given moment. Have
Yeah.
you seen that documentary about that cruise from hell where those
Uh
people are
I've not watched it, but I've seen it show up in like my timeline and stuff. Was it called like Poonami or something or
Poonami?
was it?
I
Wasn't
don't
that the subtitle or like
I
I
can't
can't remember.
remember like it was I actually can't remember, but this I think what's the Spanish word for cruise? Crucero? Crucero?
Crusader?
It was like
Yeah.
Crucera de la Caca. So it was like Poo Cruise or something, or I can't remember the English
Oh my
title, but it
God.
was Crucera de la Caca. But
Jesus.
it
Well,
was
hopefully there won't
so
be a
wild.
Poonami today.
But it was so
Um,
wild, and just reminded because can I give you a spoiler from
yeah,
the
I'm not going to watch it.
it is not a well-made documentary. It's like that, that style of documentary or uh, current affairs show where it's just talking head style thing, and it's
Yeah,
really sensationalized. It's almost like a cutaway interview for someone who's on Survivor or Big Brother or something.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
they
just all
feed
like,
them. Yeah, they feed them the lines they want them to say, basically.
yeah. And then
So
they make them talk in the present tense and stuff, and it's all
yeah,
just
and
so scripted
recreations, and
and yeah,
so
yeah.
it's not good from that point of view. It's not like,
It's
but some of it was pretty funny. Like, and these people were on this ship for about 8 days with no power, and there were 3,000 people, and so people started urinating in the showers, which obviously backed up, and then the toilets were electric, so there was no power, so they had to defecate into plastic waste bags. And so there was feces and urine all through the ship. And then when eventually these tugboats came to try and pull them out of the Gulf of Mexico and drag them back to like Mobile, Alabama, or wherever it is. Is Alabama on the coast or Mobile, Texas?
Both of them on the coast, but I
Oh,
don't
are
think
they? Well,
Mobile.
anyway, wherever they were taking them back, when the tugboat started pulling them, they pulled them on an angle where they were going against these rough seas. So the boat was like rocking. So all of the urine and feces that was everywhere just started sloshing out, and it was like this massive 3,000 person boat. So it was cascading down the walls and like dripping. People walking in ankle deep like whatever wastewater. There was there was no air conditioning, so people were sleeping out on the decks. All dragged all the mattresses. They put up tent cities out on the decks. Like people had strung up. People were fighting over sun decks. People were like some of the crew said, "Oh, let's just give all the alcohol away for free." So then there were like fist fights, and it was the
Was
wildest
there any
thing.
actual footage in this
Yes,
documentary? Oh,
yes,
right, okay.
yeah.
Well, that kind of does make me want to watch it.
But then
to see the worst in society.
But the one thing that really was the most shocking to me is the people that they were interviewing were acting so precious about having to go to the toilet in a bag. And I was like, that's the least of
That's a
the
fucking
problem.
privilege.
Yeah.
Like, really, on a global scale, you're on a cruise, okay, it's not pleasant, but yeah, like,
Yeah.
at
I
least
mean,
you've got a fucking bag to go into
like
the
I
toilet
would be
in.
more worried about other things, like running out of food, running out of water,
Yeah,
the boat
water, right?
sinking. Like to go to the toilet in a bag, like to me is the least of. But these people were acting like this one guy was like, I held on for 3 days until I couldn't hold on because there was no way I was going to go to the toilet in a bag. And I was like, mate, that is the epitome of privilege to think that that
I've,
is the worst thing that could happen to you.
I've, I, I know we had our whole shit eating swans episode, but I've voluntarily gone to the toilet in a bag when I was at Glastonbury. So Glastonbury happened
What do you
last
mean
weekend in the UK.
voluntarily? Like there
Well,
wasn't a need to, but you did it anyway.
no, because at Glastonbury, I mean, the toilets are notoriously horrific. Like, they're just disgusting. By day two, they are just absolutely rank and putrid and acrid. It's just awful. So I think I held on till day three of Glastonbury,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I cannot go in. Like, it is so revolting. So the people I'd gone with, I don't think I ever told them this. The people I'd gone with, they all went to see Oasis, and I was just like, well, I wasn't really into Oasis anyway.
Yeah.
So I just went into the tent with a black bin bag and just went to the toilet in there. I was just like, I'd rather do that. So I think that's
Well,
it's a
I don't know if
privilege. It was an honor and a privilege
it was an honor and a privilege
to miss Oasis at Glastonbury.
Well, yeah, I would rather shit in my own hand than watch Oasis. What can I tell this story on the pod? Because I know that some of your family members might listen. But do you remember I had to shit in a bag at your brother's house?
I don't remember this. Where? What?
Okay,
Which house? Which house?
remember that the not the house in Philadelphia, but the apartment before that
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
And do you know, not to give, somebody was using the toilet, I won't say who, and they were taking so long, and I really, really needed to go. This will be thanks to the psyllium husk that I take regularly and have always. I'm very regular, and when you got to go, you got to go. And you were yelling at the person who was in the bathroom, "Hey, there's a toilet emergency, please, please." And this person was saying, yeah, give me it. Give me a moment. And they were like 40 minutes in the toilet. And I
I
said
have
to you,
no recollection of this.
I cannot hold on anymore. I didn't know where else to go. Like in that neighborhood, I couldn't think of anywhere to go out and find
Yeah,
a
there weren't
toilet.
really like cafes or anything like that.
And so I got like, I don't know, like it wouldn't have been Ralph's because that's West Coast, but whatever shopping bag I had, I got 2 plastic carrier bags and put them together. And I had to go into the bedroom and close the door and squat over
Did people know this was happening?
No,
Is this a is
you
this a
knew, you
I
knew
don't I
because you helped and you clocked, and the dogs were outside the door, and because of their keen sense of smell, they were like scratching, trying to knock down the door because they could smell the Crucero de la Caca, and they were trying to scratch down the door, and so then I had to like double, triple, quadruple bag, and then run out to a bin out on the street and put it in the street. But yeah, no, we never told
That's
your
outrageous.
family
I don't
member.
remember that. I don't remember that.
And it was like, do you know when you've got to go so bad that it's like shakes and sweats, and like I was like this nervous chihuahua that you've got in the house. Like it was so stressful.
Well, thanks for sharing. Can we
How
maybe
do you not
change?
remember that?
I don't know. I have absolutely no recollection of that.
It's a
Can
memorable
we
experience.
can we change the subject? Maybe people have heard enough of like poo tales.
Well, can we talk about another documentary? We touched
Sure.
on it briefly last week, but I
Yeah.
I watched the Venus
Oh,
Extravaganza
you did. Okay.
documentary.
Great.
Yeah,
And
Hill thought that it wasn't the best made, like the narrative style or the I suppose directorial style of it, or the way that it was pieced together.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't. It's not going to win an award, I think, for best made documentary or anything. But
I
the
mean,
content was interesting.
yeah, for us as fans of Venus and admirers, I mean, like I don't say this lightly, but Venus Extravaganza has been as close to an idol as you can get for me I mean, since I was a teenager.
Mm.
Like really, really, Paris is Burning is one of the most seminal pieces of media that I've ever consumed, and probably one of the most quoted people in my life is Venus Extravaganza. The amount of times I've said lines that she said.
Mm.
So I found it very interesting from that point of view as a super fan and somebody who was heavily influenced
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
by her short life.
Mm.
But did you get a weird vibe from the brothers?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it was like a
yeah.
bit like opportunistic, or
Well, yeah, yeah. I wasn't quite sure what their motivation was in all of it. I didn't know what, were they just looking for closure? Were they looking to appease their guilty conscience? Because
yeah.
from what it sounds like, they weren't very accepting or
Oh no,
respectful towards her when she
and,
was alive.
no, and not and
Um,
even more extreme than that. It sounded like they were openly hostile to her.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so were they looking to appease that guilt? Were they looking to sort of clear their name, make themselves appear better in the big picture of it all? I wasn't sure. Or were they looking for, was there a financial incentive for them to make the documentary? I don't really know what are
Yeah.
they looking to bring a damages case to the NYPD? I mean, I wasn't quite sure, but it was from a fan, admirer, a queer person. It was an important part of queer history, I think, that she got at least some public inquiry into her death, even though, well, I mean, I don't know if we want to sort of give away the conclusion at the end of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was really interesting to get more of a background on her and her upbringing, her life, and her stuff off screen.
I did find it also a bit strange that the person who is now the mother of the House of Extravaganza, there was no real connection other than them being a trans woman who was in the house. That it was kind of like they were there as a device. They were there as a storytelling device. Not really. There wasn't really anything else. I don't know.
Yeah,
It felt a little bit tokenistic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
But
whole premise of the documentary is not. It's a bit shaky. It's a little bit
yeah.
kind of cobbled together, but yeah, it was still interesting in its
And
content.
but did you notice that is it Dominic Jackson, how she
Mm,
appears at the end? She was listed as one of the executive producers,
yeah.
and Jenny Livingston was one of the
Mm,
executive producers, who was the director of Paris is Burning.
yeah.
So it was interesting that those people were all involved. So
Yeah.
that makes me feel a little bit better about consuming it. Like it wasn't just a completely separated or devoid of the community's involvement.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Jenny Livingston is part of that community, but she's tied to the original piece of art that
Yeah.
elevated Venus.
Yeah, exactly.
But what it really struck home is it struck home for me? Is that the right term that I'm trying to say? Drove home.
Yeah.
Drove home. Look at how different people's of experience affect their outcomes in life and what happens to them. Like those brothers looked quite wealthy to me, like not like upper middle class or middle class, right? They looked, they had nice homes, like you can see the furniture in their homes, everything was well appointed. They were a poor working class family when they all started out. But if you look at what a lived reality does to somebody based on, their minority status. So those guys were like, sorry, I'm coughing here.
It's all right.
They were straight cis men. I assume they're all straight, but straight cis men, they have such a different outcome to their lives because of their lived experience and the privilege that they had. And you just talk for a second.
Okay. No, I know what you mean. Like you could see from their situation, they had houses with garages where they had stuff in storage. Like they didn't seem to be, I mean, I don't know. It was never made clear either in Paris is Burning or in this documentary really what the socioeconomic status of the family was back in the 80s or the 90s. It's hard to say, but they didn't seem to be doing too bad for themselves, no.
And so you can see it's like a cross section of what happens to, like a sort of a study of what happens to people because of the trauma or the oppression that they lived through. So Venus ended up being murdered, and that's the extreme version of that.
And I mean, they don't have. Well, I don't want to give away the sort of the conclusion of the documentary, but the Venus had turned to sex work, and that is what a lot of young trans women in New York in the 80s and 90s had to do, and still today, I think I think there's a higher occurrence of sex work among trans women because they are so excluded and ostracized by mainstream society, and getting a job where you have to produce ID, and if your gender doesn't match the ID that the sex you're assigned with at birth, it can be very difficult to go into a new job, a new organization.
And even was it Giselle? Was that her name? The mother of the house now? She was saying her life has been threatened. Like in 2023 or whenever that film was made. She was struggling. She was trying to travel to Europe, and they put her dead name on her passport, her travel documents, and so the danger that puts trans women in. So like what I'm saying is, but even if you look amongst the dynamic of the brothers, there was one of the brothers who had talked about drug or alcohol dependency or abuse, and he seemed to be on the road a lot, driving trucks. And
just keep talking. I'm just going to check on the Chihuahua. I'll be back.
Okay, and I've got fly attack. I've got your problem that you normally have. But if you're watching this, you're seeing Josh stand up and walk away from the camera because of the Chihuahua that is living with him currently is having a hard time, and I think it's because all of the attention that would normally be on the Chihuahua. All the attention that would normally be on the Chihuahua is being directed to the podcast, so the Chihuahua is getting jealous.
Sorry.
How was he?
He's all right. I think he was just looking a little bit. He's because I go and stay at his house when I look after him. All of the beds and sofas and stuff have little steps up to them because obviously he's tiny. But my bed doesn't, so he was just he looked like he was about to launch himself off of my bed, which is quite high, and I was like, I don't want him to sort of injure himself. Sorry, my hair's a mess now, but anyway, he's all right, I think. He's probably going to just have a little sleep.
Is he allowed to be on camera, or? Is
Well, it
there
can be. Why I
the
have to
person?
check with his agent.
Yeah, well, the person who lives with him might not want him to be on camera. It might be like a,
Well, you can only really see his ears, can't you?
you know,
It's
when
not.
you get photos, like family photos, celebrities with their kids, but the kids' faces are blurred out, or
No.
some parents don't want their kids to be on photos until they're 18, or
He's definitely over 18. I think he's about 100 in human years.
oh, okay. So
Yeah, he's
what
all
I
right.
was saying is the brother who spoke openly about drug or alcohol issues, he was in a job that would be traditionally aligned with a sort of more working class or lower socioeconomic. So it shows you it was sort of a study in how trauma and lived experience
Mm,
manifests in
mm.
ongoing oppression. So obviously, like, he's somebody who lived with addiction, so he wasn't maybe as wealthy as the
Yeah, and I
brothers.
think I think he the one that also appeared to be a truck driver.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
He was in a job where he was a truck driver and he was on the
yeah,
road a lot when they were having these meetings and he had to zoom in. He didn't have the privilege of just being there. And the other brothers seemed to have a bit more money and so but
mm,
then it showed you sort of the pecking order of oppression of it's like so someone with substance abuse issues would like have more problematic outcomes
mm,
in life, but then
mm,
somebody who's like a trans woman then has even more troubling and problematic outcomes to the point where, yeah, like they're forced out of the family home at like 14 or 15. They might turn to sex work. They live without much money, and then you all the associated problems with that, like poor malnutrition, lack of access to healthcare,
mm.
and ultimately being more at risk of violence. And in the worst case scenario, like Venus's example of the end of her life.
Yeah,
So to me, it was just, even though it wasn't the best made documentary, it was a really nice to have a sort of celebration or commemoration of Venus, but it was
mm,
also very eye-opening for me that how
mm,
trauma manifests in outcomes for people.
yeah. What was really interesting to me was that the use of DNA evidence. So even all these years after the crime, there was the ability to test DNA found at the crime scene,
Yeah,
and that was really interesting. And it ties into something I read this week as well about so earlier this week in Chicago, a judge threw out the convictions of 6 men who had been arrested in 1987
yeah,
and had been in prison. In total, the combined years they've been in prison were like 124 years. Some of the men, at least one of the men, had died in prison, and a
yeah,
judge just overturned their convictions based on DNA evidence.
wow,
And it was it's just so sad. It's so sad to read that these 6 men, I think the majority of them were Latinos. They were clearly just targeted by I don't know I can't remember if it was the mayor or the, what do they call it in
the
America? The
DA,
DA, yeah,
yeah,
district attorney, who, when they looked back, when they reopened the case for investigation, there was a clear suspect
yeah,
who had been linked to this man who was killed. That he'd been a person of interest in another very similar killing a few weeks before, and yet the DA or the mayor, whoever it was, decided no, he was going to target this Latino neighborhood
yeah,
and arrest these 6 men. And it was DNA evidence that, in the end, got their conviction overturned. But it was just
yeah,
really, really sad because one of them had died in prison. But, his son showed up. His son's obviously now an adult. His son showed up at the hearing or
yeah,
at the case to hear the convictions being overturned and stuff. And it's you can't get those years back. You cannot.
yeah,
But yeah, just when you talking about the Venus Xtravaganza thing and how they were able to use DNA to find out more about her killing. It reminded me of that. But
I would love a documentary on everybody from Paris is Burning. I would like a documentary on Extravaganza. I would love a
Mm.
documentary on Pepper LaBeija. I would love a
Oh yeah, like
documentary on Dorian
Dorian
Corey.
Dorian Corey. I mean, my
I would
God,
love
like
like all of it, like everyone. I want to know their stories. I want to know what happened. I mean,
yeah.
sadly, there's a lot of repetition of like oppression, bad outcomes for people, a
Mm.
lot of people passing away from complications from HIV and AIDS, like living in poverty with illness. There's a
Yeah.
lot of repetition of that when you do start piecing the stories together. But those people were so uh, not just entertaining, because that sounds a little bit exploitative, but it was so inspirational for me when I was a young queer kid growing up in
Mm.
Queensland, where it was illegal to be gay, and
Mm.
just seeing queer expressions of joy and
Yeah.
defiance was
Yeah.
so important for me. I know that because that documentary Paris is Burning does get some negative kickback from people that say that Jenny Livingston and the crew exploited the people, but
Mm.
if I look at it from just my perspective as a young queer person living in a place where it was illegal to be gay, it was a
Mm.
lifeline for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I wanted to talk today, if we have time, about prison, because looking at that case in Chicago earlier this week, will be last week by the time this episode comes out. But
Mhm.
I've been thinking a lot about prison lately, and I know I mentioned it to you the other day. Just the whole concept of prison and what we do as a society with criminals or criminal activity. What causes criminal activity? How do we discourage criminal activity and stuff like that? And it's got me sort of really thinking a lot about the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of prison. Um,
Yeah.
the go ahead, say go
Well,
ahead.
I was going to say it's so complicated. Obviously, like the idea of uh, studying criminal behavior or the justice system or the punishment system,
Mm,
but there's so much more to unpack, because it's not only what uh, discourages antisocial or criminal behavior, but it's also about the policing or the application of punishment, because it is so often racially
yeah,
imbalanced.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you could say, oh, well, we'll have these deterrents, but the deterrents are not fairly or justly dished out. And so
Mm.
you've got, I mean, do you have the statistic of the percentage of minorities in prison in the UK is, I think, 28%, isn't it?
Yeah, which is much higher than the average, minority population across the board.
Yeah.
There's very much a disproportionate amount of black and brown people in prison in the UK. But, did you know that the UK, or England and Wales at least, has the highest imprisonment rate in Western Europe, one of the highest in the world. And that to me is just, it's there's clearly something wrong. There's clearly something broken in our system, and yet we don't seem to be doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Prison population is rising, and it's costing. Not that it should come down to a cost factor. Like we should. I mean, prison's an awful thing, right? Prison is probably not the best way of treating criminal activity, except perhaps in the more extreme cases. And that's the thing. Like, I
Yeah.
think, we can sit here and think as sort of, snowflake liberals or whatever, whatever you want to sort of like, however we want to refer to ourselves, like just liberally minded people. But it's all very well for us to sit here and say, this is bad, and imprisonment rates are too high, and ethnic minorities are vastly overrepresented in the prison system, blah, blah, blah. But then I suppose the flip side to that is when a serious crime does happen, prison prison may be the best option for some criminals, and it's
Yeah.
getting that balance. It's if somebody is a murderer, if somebody is a rapist, and you think, well, if you'd been the victim of one of those crimes, well, obviously, if you're a you wouldn't be around to have an opinion about it. But
Right.
if you were the family, friend, loved one of somebody who'd been murdered, you would probably want the perpetrator to go to prison. You would
Right.
probably feel safer knowing that they weren't on the streets, and you would feel a sense of justice, perhaps. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think there's
Yeah,
ever...
but I think like the majority of people who are in prisons in the UK aren't murderers, are they?
No,
So
no,
we've
no,
got a
not at all.
system that, okay, yeah, you could make those arguments for those serious crimes that for people who are less likely to be rehabilitated, but these systems, they're not checked to stop them from spiraling out of control and exploiting whole portions of the population. And
Mm-hmm.
also, you start to get private money and private equity involved in these things, and they start to be commodified. So then it makes business sense to incarcerate people.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, where it's been turned into a business model. And the
Well,
UK is on a very, very fast track to everything being privatized, from the NHS to policing to the prison system. So that's when it stops being about the public good
mm,
and it starts being about profit over people. And then you've got all the other biases like racism and systemic racism and oppression of people. That all ties together with this race for profit. And
yeah.
it's not a good system and not a good way to go.
I mean, just jumping across the Atlantic to the US for a second, I remember in Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, where she spoke about, I think it was in the last few chapters, where she spoke about these prison companies, they're these big sort of multinational umbrella companies, part of which is, the building and maintaining of prison facilities across the US,
Yeah.
would look at the percentage of young black boys in primary school, like they would go as young as primary school, to and find out which parts of the US had the highest percentage of young black boys in primary school, and they would start building prisons there so that by the time those young black boys became, young black men or whatever, or became adults, they would have prisons ready to put them in, because the criminal justice system is inherently racist. It's inherently biased. So, and that fact just floored me, because to think these poor young children are already having these structures of racism and incarceration built around their lives without them even really knowing or being aware.
Yeah, it's a prison pipeline. It's a pipeline. But then people who are racist and want to sometimes profit from these systems of mass incarceration, they'll use those higher percentages of incarceration of black and brown people to say that there is that's some proof that black and brown people are more likely to commit crime, whereas really it's a manifestation, or it's proof that arrest rates are racist and incarceration rates are racist.
Yeah, like it's there have been so many studies that show that black and brown people are vastly over policed. I was trying to say policized, but over policed and arrested for crimes that white people will get away with. Might get a warning, might not even get stopped in the first place. But it's a pipeline. But talking about,
there's also like there's the thing around drug arrests, and obviously it's changing a lot in the US because of the drug reforms that are going on over there. But in the UK, it's also a problem because police are more likely to racially profile black and brown people, which means to stop them,
stop and search,
frisk people. More black and brown people are being found with drugs. Now, that doesn't mean that more black and brown people have drugs. It just
No.
means that they're more likely to be stopped and searched by the police.
Yeah.
And so you have more incident of the police coming in contact with black and brown people who have drugs, whereas
Yeah.
white people are less likely to be stopped by the police and racially profiled. And so they get away with using and carrying drugs at a much higher rate. And the similar thing to do with, drinking in public. Like it's, that, I mean, you go down to the park near me. I think it was yesterday. There was a group of 40 young white people all sat in a big circle in the sunshine.
40?
40, with drinking wine, all snacks out, right in the middle of central London in a park, in a family park. The police would never rock up on that.
No.
But if there were 40 young black or brown people in a park somewhere in London,
if there were 5 young black or brown people, yeah.
And so it shows you how embedded that the racism is, and then the knock-on effect of that, of arrest rates, stop and search rates, and then you have more black and brown people in prison. And then because of the systemic racism that touches every part of somebody's life, you've got people who have less access to legal representation or money to get
This is it. Like, the prison system, like, grossly over targets the people who are poorer in society, because not only from the policing angle, but in terms of, like you say, access to legal representation. Like, poor people can't afford to get the best lawyers and get themselves off, get the charges dropped, get a suspended sentence or get a reduced sentence. And so it's just this horrible, horrible machine, this, like, the grotesque machine. But what I find really shocking is that it costs over £50,000 per prisoner per year to the taxpayer to put them in prison, keep them in prison, maintain the prison, feed them, blah, blah, blah. And I just think it's something like 61%. This is statistics as of 2022, I think.
Yeah.
But 61% of prisoners in the UK, in England and Wales, up until 2022, were for non-violent crimes.
Yeah.
And you just think, well, surely, if it's costing £51,000 per prisoner per year to keep them in there, that money would be better spent, like, going towards improving society for everyone, like giving more social housing, creating more opportunities for people.
Incarceration is not about rehabilitation.
Well, no, it's
punitive.
Yeah.
And
it's ineffective.
It has been shown to not only just be ineffective, but to be negative in the long term.
Yeah.
That it forces people, it socializes people into other sorts of antisocial behaviors or criminal behavior because of the nature of it. Yeah. Also, if you've got a higher rate of being arrested and put before a judge because of your skin color or your socioeconomic standing, you're also then at the mercy of the institutionalized racism of the judge and the judge system. So you've got to deal then with the racism of the judge who's dealing with you, who has predetermined ideas based on the person's appearance who's in front of them, whether they should get a sentence or not. And you can look at you can put the link to that report you're talking of, but there are all sorts of reports that show that black and brown people are given higher sentences on average than white people for similar crimes.
Yeah, definitely. And also, you put people into this system, and whether they're there for a year or 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they get out, and not only do they still face all of these structural racism and discrimination problems, but then they have the added issue of having a criminal record. And the amount of people who get out of prison and find themselves living with no fixed address because they can't get a job, they can't get accommodation. And then the levels of recidivism or reoffending are so high that
Yeah.
it's so clear that this system is broken. It doesn't work. It doesn't do the thing that it's supposed to do. But I don't really see any politician. We were talking about this last week. We were talking about how in democracies,
Mm-hmm.
politicians are not going to say things which go against mainstream thinking because, hang on, sorry, this Chihuahuas fussing, because they won't get re-elected.
Yeah.
And it would be so refreshing, wouldn't it, to have a politician just say, you know what, the prison system's broken.
Yeah.
We are encouraging people to become more embedded in criminal activity. We're encouraging, or we're promoting the criminal justice system, which keeps people excluded socioeconomically.
Well,
And
it's like, will the archaic drug laws in the UK change? I mean, this is a starting point. This is something that could stop this pointless. If somebody goes to prison or is in the judicial system somehow because of a minor drug infringement, they're more likely to become involved in other crimes or what are deemed as crimes.
Yeah.
Like, it's the facts. Like, it's not, it's not just because they were going to be that way anyway. It's the punitive judicial system that does that to people.
Yeah. And the conditions in prison are horrific as well. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking from lived experience, but you don't have to scratch very deep to read about what it's like, and the amount of people that die in prisons or are seriously injured. Like, it's
well, I also think
disgusting
that report you shared the link with me. I think that it was something like 1 in 4 people who die in prisons have taken their own life.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, like a quarter. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
So is that not a problem? Like, I don't know. The world is messed up. I mean, all this stuff going on with people speaking out against the IDF and speaking out for Palestine during Glastonbury.
Yeah.
And so you've got Kneecap and what's his name? That other singer?
Bob Vylan.
Vylan, yeah. So you've got that, and this is becoming the main news story about how dare they speak up, and they're all saying,
I know.
Actually,
and
the main news story is the genocide, not what we've got to say.
Yeah.
And so,
and I mean, just to go to sort of go off on a tangent about that for a minute. Like, so Bob Vylan at Glastonbury was leading a chant saying "Death, death" to the IDF.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a part of me that thinks, no, death is never. Like, you don't fight violence with violence. We've spoken about that on here before. Like, I don't agree with that. I'm a pacifist, and I don't agree that you don't use violence to counter violence. However, it was very much misrepresented and misconstrued as an anti-Semitic chant, and it's not. It is not anti-Semitic to be critical of the IDF and Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, of military containment of people and genocide and occupation.
Extremism. Because people were saying, "Oh, it's wishing for the death of Jewish people." And it's like, no, it's not.
No.
It's not wishing death upon them because they're Jewish. It's wishing an end to the fucking violent killing and annexation of Gaza.
But also because people can't think critically about anything anymore. It's also, they don't realize that it's a dramatic artistic statement for the dismantling of a organization that rains terror on people. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a dramatic, evocative way to say it at a music festival. Yeah. It's not about that individual Jewish person who's in the IDF should be killed. It's not about. It's about standing up and resisting.
But I would sort of, like to go on record, I suppose, and say I don't agree with inciting violence like that. I don't agree with the chant. I wouldn't have chanted it if I'd been there. But it's you're right. Like, it's the focus is not about what this guy did on stage.
Yeah.
The focus is the genocide in Gaza. That's the fucking
And
problem
like
here.
all of these politicians in the UK are just ridiculous. Like they'll all say, "Yes, I'm going to come out and strongly denounce Bob Dylan."
Hmm.
Okay, and the genocide, how do you feel about that
Hmm.
again? Selling
Hmm.
arms to Israel, how do you feel about that again? Like
Yeah,
little
exactly.
babies starving to death. And what did you say about that again? How many
Yeah,
times you were on morning news programs denouncing
yeah,
that? Zero, dickhead. So
yeah,
fuck off.
yeah.
So it's like, and so like Zach Polanski, who we're talking about, who's trying to run for the Greens leadership, he's the only person I've seen of that sort of standing. Maybe Jeremy Corbyn as well, who is
Mm,
saying whenever they're asked about Bob Dylan or Kneecap, they say, "Oh, I don't know, but can we talk about the genocide?" Like it is
yeah,
so insignificant what Bob Dylan or Kneecap have done compared to the genocide. It
I
doesn't
know.
shouldn't even get the same amount of airtime,
No,
right?
I know.
So it is so infuriating to me. And yeah, and you want to talk?
And music has always not. Well, yeah, I would say music and festivals, I suppose, in particular, live shows have always been used to do attention grabbing, highlighting activities to shine the spotlight on forms of oppression or forms
Yeah,
of violence which need to be addressed. And this
yeah,
was no different, I don't
yeah.
think. And
And
yeah,
and like yeah, like and it's music is people are making political statements
mm,
through creative language. Songs aren't real life.
mm,
Songs and standing on stage saying those things are to get attention and draw attention to things. Go back to Public Enemy in the 80s, like Fight the Power,
mm,
right? Like they're not, like it's I think people are so simple-minded
mm,
in like the story then isn't Public Enemy like Chuck D saying fight the power or NWA saying fuck the police. It
yeah,
is about black men being targeted and
yeah,
killed by the police
yeah.
in record numbers.
It's
It's
a cry born out of desperation,
yeah,
at a situation which society just continues to ignore.
yeah,
And it's like a way of being like, for fuck's sakes, we really
yeah,
need to draw
yeah.
attention to
And
this.
at Glastonbury, Jade, do you know that singer Jade?
Mm,
She was in Little Mix,
mm,
as what people refer to as a girl band, and now she's got a solo career. Yeah, she's made statements in support of Palestine, and she said, fuck the genocide, and people in the media trying to frame her as anti-Semitic for saying, "I
yeah.
don't want to see a genocide happening," is the most
Mm,
ludicrous thing that I can imagine. Like I can't.
mm.
But then you've got half-witted celebrities who are like so pro, so Zionist, and like, it's just such a mess of a
It
situation.
is. It's horrific. But um, can we just go back to prison? Because we don't have that much time left. But I just wanted to get your thoughts. Like, what imagine if someone you love was killed by somebody.
Hmm.
What would you want if they could find the killer and prove it? I mean, there's another whole conversation to be had about miscarriages of justice, like I was talking about. There's
Hmm.
the 6 men in Chicago who
Yeah.
had been wrongly convicted and imprisoned. Um, but if there was irrefutable evidence or an admission of guilt um, by the person who'd committed the crime, like it's sort of it's all very well to sit here and want prison reform, but there is still sometimes a need, I think, for prison, isn't there? Like, I think
Yeah.
if somebody's violent, then a threat to others, um, is that enough justification to put them behind bars? And I mean, it's not a binary, I know, because prison shouldn't be the only option, not in its current form anyway. Um, but if we could redesign society, if we could redesign, the future, what would your solution be to violent crime like that?
I don't know. I think that one of the problems with the current state of the world is that people who don't know what they're talking about get to inform public policy about things that have dramatic effect. And
Mm,
I think that I also am one of those people. So I can be critical of the current system and setup,
Mm.
but that doesn't mean that I'm also have intelligent things to say about ethical alternatives that should be taken seriously. It's very hard. Like, I think it should be experts. I think
Yeah.
it should be compassionate and educated experts who know what they're talking about, who should lead the discussion. Similarly, when we talk about things like trans welfare and trans rights, it should be people either uh,
With lived
medical
experience or
medical experts or people with lived experience should be leading the public policy on these things. The NHS as
mm,
well, for the broader good. Um, Welfare reform. It should be people giving opinion. I might have my own personal reaction to somebody I love being killed,
mm,
but that shouldn't impact what happens to the broader community as a rule of thumb when
mm,
violent crime occurs. That should be
mm.
led by policy and best practice and what is the best for individuals and for society.
But
So,
don't you think that it also is perhaps effective to create public discourse around criminal justice, around prison reform? You know, because of course there's an instinctive element to something happening like that, like, you know,
yeah,
someone you love being murdered. But wouldn't it be more effective or um, more progressive, perhaps, to talk about the capacity for forgiveness, for rehabilitation,
yeah,
for
yes, yeah, for sure. Like restitution.
yeah,
I think like restitution, or what do you call it? Like, I mean, community service is a bit weird, right?
yeah, like what do they
But
call it? Not creative sentencing, but yeah, there's a term for it which I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, like
yeah, so things that are designed like at their core to be like more positive than punitive, that are meant
yeah,
to lead somewhere instead of just punish someone. Because
yeah,
just punishing someone and putting them in a situation that sets them up to fail and
yeah,
sets them on a path of reoffending
mm,
is not clearly not the answer, especially when it's costing everybody
yeah.
so much money to do that, where it's costing us billions of pounds to punish people and set them up to be future reoffenders.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you
yeah,
know,
that's all
for
wrong.
what was it, 50, I think £58,000 a year currently to accommodate a prisoner. Now, you know, this is obviously a generalization, but I would say a lot of criminals, let's not label them as that, constitutively label them, but a lot of people in the criminal justice system probably have ended up there through poverty, right? Like that's one of the driving forces behind crime, not exclusively,
Yeah,
but um, I think it's generally accepted, and it's
yeah,
backed by statistics and research that poverty is one of the leading causes of crime. Now, if it costs £58,000 a year to house a prisoner, surely just, you know, I mean, I know this is an oversimplification, and you're right, we're not experts, but you could buy a house, not in the southeast of the country, but you could buy a house for £58,000 in a lot of places around the UK.
yeah,
And I know that like property ownership isn't like the pinnacle of what we should all be aiming for, or
yeah,
it's not the solution to everything, but surely, like, just if we could house and employ and get good psychiatric and medical help for all of the people caught up in the criminal justice system,
yeah,
that would be a better use of money,
yeah,
and it would be more beneficial to society.
yeah,
Yes, there are still going to be cases where somebody does need to be incarcerated in perhaps not in the exact form that prisons are in today, but in a similar way in that they are kept separate from society
yeah,
because they are violent and dangerous. Like that will
yeah,
always there will always be people like that. But it just yeah, surely there needs to be a much more creative and forward-thinking way of using that money to rehabilitate people and stop the cause of crime in the first place.
yeah. And it all has to happen at the same time. It can't just be like, oh, let's try and solve
Yeah.
prisons. It has to stop. You need to look at the pipeline to prison. You need to look at institutionalized racism in policing.
Mm.
in just general public attitudes. It's when you're looking at more and black and brown people in the UK incarcerated at much longer time periods than white people.
Mm-hmm.
There's clearly a problem. We all know that black and brown people don't commit more crimes than white people.
Well, you say that. I mean, you and I know that, but I think if you ask the general public, I think there's probably still a very high percentage of people that do think that.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, the education needs to happen, and the deprogramming of the public and of our institutions needs to happen, so it doesn't perpetuate those things in the sentencing and the punitive measures, delivered against people. So, anyway.
Well, it's food for thought, and like in some ways, like it's futile for two uninformed, ill-educated people to sit here, two white cis men sitting here on a podcast talking about it. But I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and particularly in light of that Venus Xtravaganza documentary as well. Just thinking about, what do we do with this? Like, we can't just close our eyes, put people in behind closed doors where we can't see them, and pretend it's not a problem.
But also, I think often when we talk about prison reform, it's very easy to do this emotional thing where you've asked me, oh, well, what if someone you loved was murdered? What would you want to happen? Well, that is so rare, and that isn't the thing we're talking about. We're talking about the tens of thousands of people that get incarcerated for minor crimes or
and
haven't paid. It's not, that's not the driving force behind what we're talking about.
It's like one of those really annoying people that say to you, well, you're vegan, but if you were stranded on a desert island, it's like, oh, fuck off.
It doesn't help the conversation. And for me to sit here and tell you what I would do if my husband was murdered, what I would want to happen to that person, I'd sound like Nigel Farage or something.
But what I suppose it does do is it exposes our intuitive or instinctive responses to things, because we can only address the problem of incarceration and prison reform. We can only achieve that by confronting our fears and our prejudices, and so I think we do need to examine that on a broader level, on a broader scale. I mean, but you're right. To point to individuals and say, what would you do? Maybe that's not useful, but collectively, I think we do need to think about it.
I'm also watching a 3-part documentary on Netflix about the Zodiac killer, and in the 60s, I think it was, the 70s in San Francisco. Well, all over, but a lot in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and just the ineptitude and the racism of police even back then. I mean, probably, I wouldn't say it was worse then. It's pretty fucking bad now. But police coming face to face with the killer, who was a white person, and letting them go away because they racially profiled him as well and thought, well, it can't be him. Because he's a white middle-class school teacher or whatever. So,
I think a similar thing happened with the Moors murderers. I think that the police force in Leeds, I mean, I could be completely wrong here, but I'm pretty sure I've read that the police force in Leeds were targeting the black community, and that they actually, similar thing, like they would actually speak to the killers and let them drive away or whatever because
I
they
don't
were
remember
white.
that about them, but I do remember that the story about was it the Yorkshire Ripper, whatever his name was, Dennis, I forget his name. He was killing sex workers with hammers and stuff. I mean, sorry, I should give a trigger warning before I say stuff like that on the podcast. It's not a nice thing to hear, but like somebody who survived, a black woman was,
or maybe that's
not believed by the police.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Or maybe I've got my serial killers mixed up.
Or with was it with Jeffrey
maybe
Dahmer?
my Yorkshire serial killers mixed up.
Yeah, oh my God, there's a lot of them. But what about with Jeffrey Dahmer, and didn't one of the young black men get away from him, and the police took him back there because Jeffrey said, "Oh, it's my boyfriend, and we've had a fight." but this young man was wandering around naked in the street with like obvious trauma to his head, and they took him back there. Like, what a nice way to end the podcast.
Yeah, I know. God, can we lighten the mood at all? We should probably just say, please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening for more gripping content like this. We're on.
I'd love to hear if anyone's listening to us on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please just leave us a comment, leave us an episode rating, so we know you're out there. I mean, the statistics say that you are listening, but drop us a comment to let us know. In the meantime, you can find our social media links in the show notes. You can also follow me if you're interested in finding out what I'm up to. I'm Josh and the Jumpstarts, and most of my stuff is on Instagram. You can listen to my music on Spotify or Apple Music or Deezer or Amazon Music. What about you, Sean?
People can follow me at Fat Gay Vegan on Instagram or TikTok, but it's the same content. And you can read my blog, fatgayvegan.com.
Great. We will be back in your feeds this time next week, wherever you're listening or watching. Until then, stay safe.
And I would like to wish you all much success if you have to defecate into a bag. And I hope that if you do need to defecate into a bag, it doesn't have any holes in it.
Yeah. All right. I was trying to think of a nice sort of pun to end on about jabs, but yeah.
Well,
we'll have to workshop that for next week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all we've got until then is, I think the best from this episode was Jabba the Slut.
Jabba the Slut. All right. So from Josh and the Jumpstarts and Jabba the Slut. Take care. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.